There are two types of compounds that we generally discuss in introductory chemistry. The first is ionic compounds, and there are several videos on how to name ionic compounds. The second is covalent compounds. So this video looks at what are the rules when you have two nonmetals. So the rules are, first you name the first element. Nice. Then you name the second element as though it was an anion. And remember, naming something as though it was an anion is really tacking on that the "ide" ending. So for instance, chlorine becomes chloride when it's named as an anion. So we're going to name these elements as though they're anions, even though this is a covalent compound and there are no ions present. Secondly, we'll add a numerical prefix to the first element if there is more than one present. So for instance, if I had C2O6, then my name would say dicarbon, because I have two carbons, and di is the numerical prefix for this. Now here's another thing to note about covalent compounds. Notice that those numerical subscripts on the compound are not the lowest whole number multiples, like they have to be for ionic compounds. Great thing about covalent compounds is they give you the formula, you name what's there. There's no needing to simplify. So if someone asks you to name C2O6, you name C2O6. You don't simplify it down to CO3. The last step is to add a numerical prefix to the second element, and that happens every single time. So on the first element, we do it if there's more than one of that element, and on the second element, we add it every single time. So what are those numerical prefixes? If you don't recall them, I've got them listed here, and you can see you've got mono, di, tri, tetra, penta, hexa, hepta, octa, nona, and deca, 1 through 10. These guys are not as common, but you still want to be aware of them because given that I'll ask you to be responsible for them, that means I'll probably assess you on them. So, name the compounds below. Using our rules that we just talked about, we're going to name the first element first. We're going to give it a numerical prefix if there is more than one. So I look here and see I've got a P5. It's definitely more than one. The prefix for 5 is penta. So I have pentaphosphorus, making sure to spell my element correctly because spelling does count when we're naming compounds. And then on the second element, I have an oxygen, and there are 10 of them, so this is decaoxide. Now the one place where you may see differences in spelling is right here, that double vowel. Sometimes people drop the A, and that is permissible. I tend to leave it there, so that's just the way I will tend to spell them. In my second compound, I have one nitrogen first, so I just write the name of the element because I only add a numerical prefix if there's more than one. My second element is bromine, and there's 3 of them, so I call it tribromide. Our last example is one carbon, so carbon. And then the second element I only have one of as well, and because the rules tell me I always put a numerical prefix on the second element, I will call that monoxide, or better known as carbon monoxide. There's that double vowel alternative spelling that's permissible. Let's start with some names and go to formulas. And it's great here because in a covalent compound, you just take the information that the name gives you and write it as a formula. You don't have to figure out charges or figure out how many ions or add to 0 because there are no charges in covalent compounds. When I look at this first name, I see that this is tetra, which tells me 4, sulfur, which is an S, and then I have tetra again, 4, and nitride, which is telling me I'm talking about nitrogen. So I translate that information into S4N4. All done. Next I have diiodine, which tells me 2 iodines, and hexa, which tells me 6 fluorines. So this is I2F6. Last, we have di-nitrogen, so 2 nitrogens, and monoxide, so 1 oxygen. So this is N2O.